Do you feel sad every time your enemy locks in Fanny with a Skylark skin, thinking your MMR is GG? Have no fear, in this video we will teach you everything that you need to know to counter Fanny players and come out on top. You know, we don't waste any time on this channel, so let's go ahead and jump right in. We start things first off chronologically, and let's start off first with drafting. The easiest way really to counter Fanny is to know when the enemy is drafting a perfect lineup for her. One huge tip that we have is if you see enemies banning Saber, Franco, or even to a lesser extent characters like Kufra, these are telltale signs that there is going to be a Fanny player on the enemy team, and you want to ban Fanny if you can, because it will be much more difficult to handle her, especially without these easy to draft suppression heroes that are very flexible as well. But of course, sometimes your pub teammates just ban Nana or your hero because they want your role, but not to worry, that's what we are here for. So let's first things first, start off with broad general gameplay tips about Fanny, and then we'll talk about some hard counters. So part 2, gameplay of Fanny. Even if you can't ban her, the best way to counter Fanny is really to understand her game plan. This starts as early as level 1. Fanny players tend to usually start at the purple buff as it helps reduce her skill cost and get her in on early game action. In lower brackets and uncoordinated teams in general, meaning non 5-stack, 3-stack queues, invading a jungle is a really nice way of adding pressure to delay the Fanny and even get your jungler ahead, even if you can't take the enemy's purple buff or blue buff, depending what you guys call it. At higher brackets, the enemy mid lane and roam will tend to babysit the Fanny early on, knowing that there's going to be aggression. So you should not commit too hard to invading the jungle, especially if you're not playing with friends, and if you're solo queuing, generally it's a lot tougher. We'll touch on what you can do later on, but generally speaking, game plan of Fanny, there are two types of Fanny players. The assassin, one-bang Fanny players that you always see on YouTube, TikTok, or wherever not. And of course, there's a more fighter, sustained damage Fanny. Assassin Fannies focus on picking off squishy heroes like marksmen and mages and can quickly burst down these units very quickly. Fighter Fanny, on the other hand, focuses on building lifesteal and some defensive items for much more sustain for the team, so she can add pressure over a longer period of time too. The tricky part about this is that good Fanny players actually can transition from one build to another within the game itself. So you guys need to be really careful and observe Fanny's build as it goes on to see whether she's still building plenty of damage or starting to shift into a more defensive option halfway through the game, where maybe she realizes she can't one burst you because you watched this video and know how to counter her properly as well. But regardless of what Fanny is, she has one massive weakness, and that really is suppression. So let's jump in with part 3, hard counters, suppression heroes. The best role to shut down Fanny out of all the roles in the game is the roam or tank role, because they are either chunky or have ready suppression for Fanny in a lot of characters. Drafting good picks will really make her shiver in fear, since there are so many available that you can choose from and keep her at bay. Heroes like Franco, Saber are the easiest two roams if you play them as roam to shut down Fanny. As long as you have your ultimate ready, the Fanny will be much less aggressive. So make sure to keep it available, don't just use it on the first hero you see. Even if you do, make sure you win the team fight. If you wish to shut down the Fanny in the long term, if you commit 4v5, it's still okay if you don't have your ultimate, since you are at a number advantage thereafter. Other roams that are also quite decent here are the likes of Kufra, Kaja, and of course, these two units are a little bit harder to properly use and shut down the Fanny. So if you are a roam player or you're looking to build your arsenal of characters, try learning some of these two heroes or two others that we'll talk about in a bit to add to your arsenal if you struggle with Fannies in general. As for fighter role, Ruby and Chow, who also can be played like in the tank role if you need some adjustments, are probably the best for suppression in EXP lane fighter roles. Especially if you need the adjustments, you can be very good for drafting flexible teams for your entire team as well. Some other characters, marksmen, Moskov and Melissa are probably our two great picks for you. Moskov because he has a good stun that can pin Fanny, and as well as Melissa, who has good self-protection with her ultimate, allowing you the possibility to trap the Fanny and kill her even or maybe at the very least survive and keep the Fanny at bay together with Wind of Nature that you have, which helps you be immune to physical damage that the Fanny wants to do to you. Make sure to build Wind of Nature early, and Dreadnought Armor also if you find the Fanny focusing purely on bursting build and focusing on you in general. Junglers with good suppression are the likes of Saber with his ultimate, Bane, Hellcat. All of these characters offer generally good offense to Fanny, but we'll touch on more junglers as well in our game plan sections shortly. But next up, of course, the weakest role out of all of them to deal with Fanny really is the mages. Because of the lack of mobility that they have, itemizations in general, they don't have access to like Wind of Nature. This tool already makes it much more squishier and trickier to handle Fanny. However, that doesn't mean you are going to make you totally useless. You can make it a little bit trickier for Fanny to deal with you. One tip that we have is make sure that you hide in bushes and stay hidden from plain sight until the Fanny shows herself. This way you can avoid a lot of the pressure, let your chunkier characters like your roam, your EXP laners draw the first aggro, and then you can come in and burst down the Fanny. Heroes that are really good against her are burst mages that with some sort of suppression, like Eudora, Veil, very strong against Fanny, but of course, don't go in first and let yourself be seen because likely you can be burst down. If you find yourself getting bursted down very often, Winter Truncheon or Blood Wings offer you a good mix of damage utility in the form of protection or movement speed for yourself, as well as some shielding. Gameplay counters. Now this is part 4 here. Sometimes you can't have the perfect draft, or even if you can, the Fanny player is just really good for some strange reason, or since like the Fanny last picks or something like that. Not to worry, we can talk about countering her in her game plan strategy. Fanny is a kill-based juggler and not a good objective taker, meaning she is usually much slower to want to take turtle or lord unless at a clear advantage, like being one man up or your teammates being totally far away on the other end of the map. You can really play to this to your advantage by asking your team to focus around objectives and securing them early. If your team has good objective-based junglers like Belmont, Fredrin, Bane, and so many others, make sure to use this as your advantage because you are very strong in the jungle objectives early on. Apart from objectives, the first 4 levels of the game is actually the most crucial thing, because if you make a wrong play in the first 4 levels, the game really snowballs in her favor and you do not want that. So what do? While it's good to invade like Fanny early on, at higher ranks, if Fanny gets a buff with her teammates' help, she can really burst you down very quickly, especially with the purple buff on her. A method that I prefer generally is to help your jungler secure his buff quickly, so play on the defensive, help you speed up your jungler instead of going aggressive, and prepare for an engage right as early as the second buff. Most of the time, this tends to be the red buff on your team because the Fanny likes to go to the red buff the quickest as it's nearest to her purple buff position, and her mobility also allows her to weave in and out of danger very quickly around the map to go back to her buffs if she can't take yours. Make sure, in general, to help your jungler secure both his 2 buffs, the first 2 buffs, and then he'll be in a great position to fight during objectives, which is when your team is strongest. After the first 2 buffs before the turtle, Fanny is really looking to hunt for early game pickoffs. If you are MM or mage or even a squishy roam, avoid being too aggressive, showing on the map if you have too low life. Go back to base if you have to heal up, to be full on life so you can increase your chances of surviving if the Fanny tries to dive you. Don't give Fanny early game picks off, even if you're EXP laner please, and you will have a very good power of itemization and objectives if you manage to drag out the early game to help you win the game overall.
Say the cheese. Stay close. Not my thing. Annoyances. You got me.
Now part 5. Squeezing in a few last general tips here, and of course if you're finding value in this video so far, do give us a like, subscribe, and even comment if you want to see more hero guides, and let us know what you want to see next as well. But part 5 is a few last general tips. Regardless of the role that you play, these tips will help you to counter Fanny, and if you find her damage too much to survive, consider picking up Antique Curious, which will help reduce her skill damage by a significant amount. For marksmen, you can also consider picking up Dreadnought Armor if you really wanted to. Other survival items, for example like mages that we talked about, Winter Truncheon, Blood Wings, even Reincarnation if you really needed to get all those items. And of course, last but not least, avoid sticking to walls since Fanny really utilizes them to do a lot of damage. Counterintuitive, but you want to stand in the middle of the ground rather than closer to the sides of walls because Fanny relies on them a lot. Hope this tip helps you gain MMR, and check out the channel for more of such counter hero guides for other heroes that you might be struggling with or you just want to come out ahead on top on. Leave a comment below which one you struggle with, and thank you guys again so much for watching, and see you guys in one of these two next videos.